welcome in Bobby Marks of ESPN, front office insider. We got the draft tomorrow. We're in the thick of the offseason time now, Bobby. What is the one seed for thing that you're most interested in over the next maybe 48 hours?
Yeah, I mean, I think, certainly there's a lot of players that, outside of the draft, of course, there's a ton of guys we're still waiting on as far as with player options. That comes on Saturday. There's a deadline there. I think, certainly what happens with Paul George and with the Clippers as far as whether there's a new contract in place by the time we get to free agency, or certainly if he, certainly probably one of the best free agents outside of LeBron, becomes available here. So I think that just because there's certainly a lot of different, things in play, whether, if he doesn't return, what happens with James Harden? If he returns, what happens with Philadelphia with all that money they have there? So I think he kind of, has a little bit of the keys to free agency. I think that the draft is certainly intriguing, which is Wednesday and Thursday with, the unknown. I mean, it's one of those rare drafts where it's pretty wide open here.
Hey, Bobby, how real is the conversations everybody's hearing about Bronny James? Did he do that much? My background myself, I was a NFL scout, and so the combine was always important to us, but how much did he really help himself at the combine?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take a big picture approach on Bronny. I mean, he was a McDonald's All-American for a reason.
Sure. Before
he got to USC. I think you have to take that into account. I think you have to take into account the Nike Hoop Summit that he played in last year in Portland. I think you have to take into account him not playing for 5 or 6 months after the incident with his heart last July.
Right.
Did he help himself in Chicago? I think he did. I think, if you're basing it solely off that, I think you can probably get yourself in some trouble there. I think he's got a role in this league down the road. Will he get drafted? Probably. I don't get caught up, and I know there's a lot of people saying, well, he's only get drafted because his dad and all this. I don't get caught up with that. I think, listen, he's undersized. He's an undersized two guard. 2.5 with shoes. He can probably guard two positions. I think he can be I don't want to say elite level defender, but I think he can be an NBA level defender. That's kind of what his role would be. Right. He's a second round prospect. I think the second round is always a crapshoot because it's not always about who's the best available or, best need. And, it's based on, okay, what do we have roster wise? Who would fit great locker room wise? Who's willing to kind of go to the G League? Who's the developmental project maybe 2 years from now? So I think there's a lot into that there. But, as I said, he was a highly touted prospect, before he got to USC. I think the health incident certainly set him back. It's almost like a guy tear. I don't want to equate like an ACL, but, you take a year for how to get back from that.
Sure.
So, I'm intrigued. I got to sit down and meet with him. I think he's terrific. I think he's a terrific young man. I think when you're, as I said, when you're picking in the second round, it's your 13th, 14th, 15th guy, right? It's your kind of your connectors at the end of your bench.
Well, Bobby, when you start to, how much when you were in the front offices and stuff, and you're sitting across from kids, like the guys, the bloodlines, like dad was a player, mom was a track athlete. I mean, that to us was always, I was digging question after question. I know you're probably the same way. Yeah. Did you find yourself asking this kid a bunch of questions, even though you knew the dad kind of a thing? Or was it that kind of, were you getting that kind of deep with the kid?
No, I don't know about, listen, he gets it, right? I mean, he gets it that everyone, it motivates him that a lot of people have probably counted him out, and motivates him that basically that he will get drafted because of his dad.
Right.
He wants to, as best as he can, he wants to carve out his own identity, through this process. Does he go before 55 at the Lakers? I don't know. I mean, probably for the best of the kid, I would say he should, right? For him, because basically if he's staring at 55, we know what the narrative will be, right? He's only picked because of LeBron and stuff. Right. So I think, we get to, I'm 51 now. Now I'm meeting with kids whose dad we had.
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah.
So it's but certainly, listen, the holidays with Drew and Aaron and Justin, there's a bloodline there. Kenyon Martin's son, KJ,
right.
Gary Trent Jr. There's a pedigree there as far as guys who's had parents who played professional basketball or played football.
Bobby Marks with us here on 105.3 The Fan. I think from a Mavs perspective, going into the offseason, the big question is Derrick Jones Jr. Yeah. How likely do you think it is the Mavs are able to keep DJJ?
Yeah, it's just a matter of, I think there's a couple ways you can go about it. I think, you'd have to create some room to go out and just from the flexibility standpoint, because the most you can offer him is where you are financially is $5.2 million. And this is a guy that's, I think, made $26 million in his career. So he's, of course, he's looking for probably a significant pay raise, $10 to $12 million in that direction. So it's just a matter of kind of who the odd man out is. And it's not Dante or Hardy or, some of the guys, on the low end. It's basically like, are you willing to move Tim to basically afford, Derrick? Are you willing to move Maxey? I'm just throwing out contracts that are, in that $11, $12 million range. Or you move Dwight Powell, for example. I mean, a little bit less. But that's going to be the big thing. I think you would love for, and this Bobby Portis did this back in Milwaukee about 3 or 4 years ago. You would love for Derrick to come in and say, we're going to take a 2-year deal at $5.2 million. Player option for next year, and what that does is it accrues early bird rights for next year, and you can give him a $12 to $13 million contract, and you won't have to trade a player there. But that comes with the player sacrificing $6 or $7 million this offseason.
Bobby, what Derek Lively was just a huge, I guess, surprise for all of us.
Yeah,
from
awesome.
In the scouting community, where were you guys on that? And then now do you look at it and go, okay, I told you bums, I had this guy right. And you guys were trying to talk me out of this kid. But where were you now on him? Where should scouts look him? Yeah.
Listen, one of the things that I do is I work with a lot of these draft prospects. I've been doing this since Jason Tatum came in the draft. Helping them when they get to meet with teams, when they're doing their interviews. So for the month of May, I'll sit with all these prospects. That's at 60 or 70 a year. And really coached them as far as the interview process here. And I flew out to LA last year and sat with Derrick. And certainly the story with his mom, is inspirational, and certainly her passing is certainly a sad moment for him. But I just love the kid. I mean, I love his personality. I think he got. I think there was so much untapped potential based on what we saw at Duke. His freshman year there. And they got a steal. And when you can hit on draft picks,
right?
You got that guy you'll get him for the next 8 years, right? Mm-hmm. You get him on your rookie contract, you'll get him on an extension probably here, and that's the beauty of trying to build out a roster. Especially where Luka is, salary wise, where Kyrie is salary wise, where things might get a little bit expensive, but if you can find those type of guys, man, those are it's similar to what OKC's been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
When you get Jalen Williams. I think at 13, and then Cason Wallace. I know that was actually the trade with Lively there. That helps you in the long run.
Bobby, the last thing I wanted to ask you about was you brought up Luka there, and I think we've had a conversation about Luka and wanting to play for his national team and the Olympic qualifiers. Being a GM in your background, how would you juggle that if you were the Mavericks and maybe wanting him to take a break or focus on his body and other things like that, instead of just keeping and maintaining playing?
Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, you would love for him to take the summer off, right? Basically maybe train with train with the team or be a part of it, but not from the competition standpoint, because, certainly from an Olympic standpoint, you're basically going, you're going June, July, end of June, July. Now Olympic starts in August, and then basically then camp starts at the end of September. But it's tricky. I mean, because you're really you don't want to interfere with that. You're not going to tell the player he can't. Certainly the league really lets the players kind of decide. And at the end of the day, he's got to trust his body. I mean, the only thing you can do is provide as much support as you can, whether from a training standpoint, whether having your own guys over there with him in that aspect. But a lot of it is just kind of rest. You love that he's playing, right? So he's he'll be in good shape when he comes back in late September and everything like that. But it's similar to what the Team USA guys, like, Tatum and Holiday, two guys that are going to play, like, you're going to have to really take it easy on these guys when they do come back, where you're kind of trying to integrate them in October.
Bobby, it's always a real treat, man. Thanks so much for the time.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.